get that.
So come on.
Part of their issue might, for a little while, might be the sun right there, maybe. But
Yeah, that's fine.
We can
you
each.
can do your
Yeah.
do our own.
Yeah.
Is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Real quick, and I can start us off if you want it. Unless
Yeah.
you want to start us off.
No, you do it.
Okay.
So you got your PowerPoints here?
You do it.
Yeah, it's a copy. This is a. He's actually got the actual PowerPoint there, and I got a PDF copy of it here.
Ah, okay.
That I'm flipping
I
through.
this is an iPad, right? I could
Yes.
put that on my iPad. I just have to
Yeah.
coordinate with mine here.
I know, and I do that a lot too. And then he mentioned he was just going to have his tablet, and I was like, maybe I'll try to do that too. And then that way I have my talking points there.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I was
so-
like, where are my talking points going to be?
You mean this thing? Okay.
That's the only note.
That's fine. Okay. This off. Great.
So we just turn these things on when we need them.
We'll find out.
Probably for the video.
For the live stream.
We might
here.
be sharing. Is that better? Yes. All right, good. My voice doesn't carry enough. Okay, so as I said, good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Shea, and I'm a board member on the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council. Closer? Okay. And it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this beautiful, beautiful space today. This is the first time I've been out here, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful space, and particularly for this type of event. So thank you all for coming this morning to join us. So I'm going to read a little bit here. This is our introduction to our events. So good morning and welcome to all of you here at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Coralville, and also to those joining us via live stream. To the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council's program featuring Keith Porter, Sally Obernolte, and Deb Schoelerman, speaking on the topic of green architecture, building for the future. So as I said, my name is Christine Shea, and I'm an ICFRC board member, and I'll be your host for today's program. Just as a brief reminder, we plan for this program to go until 11:30, and then afterwards we'll have refreshments and a tour of the building for those who are interested. And one other thing as well, if anybody requires it, the bathrooms are just out here around the corner. And then, as you said, the refreshments will be in the back after we're finished. So we are also, sorry, one more thing here. Today is our 5th program in our spring 2025 lineup. And we are in the middle of our new 4-part series, The Changing Environment, Adaptation, Resilience, and Sustainability, of which today's session is a part. So more information about the series is available on our website and also with our plaster. plastic stands if you're interested, but the website is really the best source of information about this series and also about upcoming events in addition to the series. So we are deeply grateful for the long-standing support from our community. Your help has allowed our organization to grow for 41 years, hosting speaker programs with experts joining us in person and online from around the world. As a small nonprofit, we exist because of the generosity of individuals like you. As we head into 2025, opportunities for nonprofit funding beyond individuals is becoming more difficult as charitable organizations like ours face an uncertain future, especially when focused on uplifting research and stories advocating for marginalized, vulnerable, and international communities. Please consider donating by cash or check with the QR code, again, and on the website, to keep our free educational programs available over the next year. ICFRC would like to give a heartfelt thank you to today's sponsors and partners, including the UI's Office of Sustainability and the Environment, Center for Human Rights, International Programs, and International Studies, as well as 100 Grannies, Neumann Monson Architects, Midwest One Bank, and of course, the UUS of Coralville for providing partnership, space, and today's food. Thank you all very much for your support. Our next program will be this Friday, April 4th at 12 noon at the Iowa City Public Library, and the program is titled Fostering Climate Resilience Together. Researchers, sovereign tribal communities, and women farmland owners will discuss how they are collaborating to foster climate resilience through the newly established Central Midwest Climate Opportunities and Learning Team. And this is funded by the NOAA Climate Adaptation Partnerships Program that supports Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. This panel brings together a tribal member, as we said, a woman farmland owner, and several project researchers to share what they are learning from each other and what tangible climate-wise action is underway, and how these strategies participate in global efforts to adapt to a changing climate. So again, please see our website. We have more information there and more details about the people who will be presenting and also the topics and further upcoming events. So with that, I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. So we have Keith Porter, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Stanley Center for Peace and Security. Previously, he was its Director of Policy and Outreach. As the Center's top executive, Porter works with all Center staff and its board of directors to develop and implement all aspects of the organization's vision, mission, and strategic plan. As the chief representative of the Center to a variety of external audiences, Porter promotes global collaboration across each of its programmatic areas with representatives from national and subnational governments, the media, the private sector, and civil society. Sally Obernolte is an architect and principal at the Neumann Monson Architects with over 23 years of experience. She served as project manager for the Stanley Center for Peace and Security beginning in 2020, guiding the project through one of the most ambitious sustainability frameworks in the world, the Living Building Challenge. Sally led client interactions and team collaboration throughout the project and has presented its story at local and national events. In addition to her project work, she leads the Neumann Monson's client experience team, reinforcing the firm's commitment to design excellence through empathetic, authentic engagement that challenges the status quo. And we have Deb Schoelerman as well, who attended the University of Iowa and graduated with a degree in Latin, Spanish, and secondary education. Yes, very close to my heart. I'm in the Spanish and Portuguese department as well. She taught Spanish for over 20 years and now interprets for the Iowa City School District. She and her husband have lived in Iowa City for most of their adult lives, and Deb has been a member of the Unitarian Universalist Society since 1981. She has served on the Board of Trustees 3 times, 2 times as president. And Deb served as a member of the New Facilities Committee from June 2015 through December 2018. And the committee's responsibilities included oversight of construction of the $6.3 million church. She currently chairs the land ministry team, whose responsibilities include management and oversight of 8.5 acres of woodlands, 3 bioretention cells, and other outdoor enhancements. She is also chair of the building team and works with the administrator for the care and maintenance of the building. So please join me in welcoming our wonderful panel.
To get started.
Sure, go ahead. If you would like to begin, Sally?
Sure. Is this working? Yes. Okay. Keith, I think we might be sharing here a little bit. Okay. Yeah, thanks for having us, everyone. Keith and I are very excited to be here, talk about the Stanley Center and green architecture in general. So excited to see so many great faces in the room this morning. As we mentioned, we have given this presentation a number of times. It's usually actually an hour long, so we're trying to give you the condensed version today. Let's see if our slide advancer works. It does. Awesome. A little sensitive, so I'm going to... Now I broke it. There we go. Oh, just likes to be a little finicky. Okay, hopefully it holds right there. All right, just a little bit about what we want to talk about today. We'll give you a little bit of a recap or a summary, I guess, of really what is the Living Building Challenge. That might be new to a lot of people. Then Keith is going to speak a little bit more about inclusive process and what really drove their priorities and their decision making. I'll jump back in then on the third part about what are some of those design strategies that we included, and then we'll both wrap up with some of the lasting impacts that we've seen so far with the project. Let's see if I can get this to advance correctly here. Maybe. I don't know, it's just a little finicky. There it went. All right, start with the living building. Next. Yeah, maybe you'll need to. I might just have to let you know. It works, but doesn't work quite in a responsive way there. So thank you. So what is the Living Building Challenge? You'll hear us a lot of times refer to it as LBC in short, its acronym. But it comes from the Living Future Institute, and they define it as the philosophy, certification, and advocacy tool for projects to move beyond merely being less bad and toward being truly regenerative. So what that kind of means is some of you might be familiar with LEED as a different type of green certification process. And that typically would fall on this kind of graph on the screen, like within that green and high performance lines there on that graph, meaning obviously better than code, but we're still not quite 100% sustainable, right? And so it hasn't quite reached that neutral point on the graph there. So LBC actually aims to push past that point of being sustainable and become truly regenerative or being a net positive to the environment. So they like to say, or like to ask, what if every single act of design and construction made the world a better place? If we go next. So the challenge is organized really into a framework of 20 different imperatives. You might be a little hard to read on the screen there, but a couple examples are ecology of place, net positive water, net positive carbon, and so on. And then those imperatives, they organize them into 7 different categories, and they call those categories petals. And those petals are place, water, energy, health and happiness, materials, equity, and beauty. And if you're, again, familiar with LEED, a few different ways that the two differ is that, like in LBC, you must achieve net zero water and net zero energy consumption versus just a reduction. LBC is also, their compliance is based on the building's actual performance over 12 consecutive months of operation rather than just based on the modeled or the anticipated design. So they make you actually go through and prove it, that you actually did it and it's doing its job. And then LBC really goes even beyond the building. They ask you to reflect on place by learning about the ecology and the history of the site that you're residing in. You have to reflect on social justice and pursue what's called your JUST label. And another difference is that you have to incorporate urban agriculture and grow your own fresh food right there on site. And next. So then under the umbrella of LBC, there are actually 5 different certification pathways. The first couple are zero carbon and zero energy, which might be somewhat self-explanatory. And then the third is core certification, which requires meeting 10 of those 20 imperatives that pointed out on that previous slide. And then pedal certification requires you to meet core, plus it says, hey, pick either water, energy, or materials. They see those as kind of the big 3. Pick one of those and do all of the imperatives underneath one of those. So you're going along a specific pathway there to get pedal certification. Or the Stanley Center, they followed living certification, which means you have to achieve every imperative under every pedal. So they did the one on the very far right. And next. And right now, the last I checked on the map, unless it's changed since then, there were currently 34 living certified projects in the world. So that's of the one on the right on the screen. There's several other of the other certification pathways, but 34 in the world. Stanley Center would be the first full living certification in Iowa. Most living buildings, it's also nice to point out that most of them are actually new builds, so it's brand new construction, where the Stanley Center actually chose to renovate an existing building. And I believe it's still the case that you would be the second in the world to achieve the certification as a renovated building. And next. And here I'm going to turn it over to Keith so he can share a little bit about the process and how decisions were made to go down this path.
Thanks, Sally. Let's go to the next slide. We really put a lot of thought into this, and I want to tell you about, why we chose to do this, the steps that we took, the value alignment that we found, not only internally, but with Neumann Monson as well, and then the steps that they led us through. So let's go forward a slide, and one more. That's not a video, is it?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then, so first of all, just to think about, Muscatine. The Stanley Foundation started in 1956. We rebranded a few years ago as the Stanley Center for Peace and Security. Our organization, really, I could give you long history of this organization, but you can go read our website and learn about Max and Betty Stanley and, them coming to Muscatine and the businesses that they formed. But the Stanley Center for Peace and Security really works on policy change at the global level. So it's really about getting countries to work together to solve problems. So we work on climate change, mass violence and atrocities, and nuclear weapons policy. Those are huge issue areas, each of them. We don't do all of it. We pick very strategic things in each area where we feel like we can leverage our limited resources to really make a difference. And it really does center around multilateral or multi-stakeholder engagement, so getting countries to work together to solve those problems. Now, you may wonder, why do this from Muscatine? And that's a question that we've had for ourselves for a long time. It's not the easiest place in which to do this work, but it's also the place where the Stanley family started their businesses, like Hahn Industries, still headquartered in Muscatine, Stanley Consultants, a worldwide engineering firm, still headquartered in Muscatine, and 5-6 years ago, when we really pushed the board on this question, like, are we staying here? Are we moving somewhere else in Iowa? Are we moving somewhere else in the country? They talked about this for a long time. None of them live in Muscatine anymore, by the way. But they really decided that the roots of this organization were in Iowa. The wealth that fuels the work that we do, we have a private operating foundation, so we don't make grants. We do all of our own programming, either on our own or in collaboration with others. And we operate from an endowment that was established by Max and Betty back in 1956, and it's continued to grow and grow. And they said, that wealth was generated in Muscatine, and therefore it should continue to be a part of that economic ecosystem and give back to the community there. And we said, great, we can do that. but we need to make some changes. And one of them was to create a new headquarters. Since the organization started, we had leased office space in various buildings around the community, and we said, recruiting people is difficult. Getting people to come to Muscatine, I like to say that there are jobs that are sort of evenly distributed across the country, like accountants or communication directors, people like that you can hire almost anywhere you go. Nuclear weapons experts, not so much. They tend to be in, New York and DC and Vienna and places like that. Harder to find in Iowa or in the Midwest. And so we needed to be able to be an attractive place for people to come work. And one part of that was to build our new headquarters. And they committed to, letting us build this headquarters somewhere in the area. And so that really set us off on this search, but limited by the fact that we were going to stay in Muscatine. And we looked at a whole bunch of places in Muscatine. You can go to the next slide. Next, one of the first things I did was contact a search for architects, and that meant that I talked to a lot of other organizations that did major building projects, like the Principal Financial Group, the University of Iowa, in Muscatine, HNI, the Hahn Corporation, and Kent Industries, to talk to them about who they were using and who they recommended. And that generated a short list, which we narrowed even farther. And you can go to the next slide. Yeah. No, go back one. Yeah, so we had one major firm in the area come and talk to us one day, and they gave a great presentation, really blew us away with photos of the amazing buildings that they've done, all over the Midwest. And they were very enthusiastic. And even at the end of that meeting, I said to my colleagues, well, maybe let's just cancel that meeting with Neumann Monson tomorrow. I mean, why do we need to do that? These guys are great. We want to go with this firm. And they said, no, they often have to rein in my enthusiasm. And they said, no, Keith, let's go ahead and listen, it's our due diligence. Let's have Neumann Monson come make their presentation. And Neumann Monson came in with a values-based presentation that was very appealing to us. They actually had a slide, I don't know if this is the same one or not, but they had a slide like this where they looked at our visions and missions and how they aligned. They looked at our core values that we had on our website and showed how they were in alignment with our core values, and that really spoke to us deeply. We're like, oh yeah, this is really what we want. We want people who share our values. So that was really meaningful to us, and we ended up going with Neumann Monson. So you can go to the next slide. And then, so one of the things that they did that was really meaningful early in the process, before we started looking at sites or anything like that, was what they call their all-staff visioning process, where they brought all of our staff and many of our board members together and put us through a series of steps that I assume they do with all of their clients to figure out, what is it that you really want? What are you looking for? How do you work on a daily basis? What are the things that you're looking for? What would look like success when it comes to this building project? And lots of things came up. People wanting access to daylight, people wanting to be able to walk outside the building to restaurants and other services. But of course, our staff, because we work on climate, but we're also people who care very much about the world, had environmental sustainability ranked very highly in that list. And you can go to the next slide. And Neumann Monson came back to us and said, well, one of the things that we could do is to pursue certification, so that we can show the world that you've actually created an environmentally sustainable building. And they walked us through lots of different options. Sally showed you all the ones that are within the International Living Future Institute's realm, but then all these other ones, the LEED certifications and the WELL certifications and those kind of things. And all the way out here at one edge was the Living Building Challenge, the full certification. And that was just very appealing to us. I think if one of these... Yeah, one more slide. You can see how we went through a series of votes and trying to gather opinions and some online immediate surveys. I think during the process, and you can go on to the next one. Ultimately, we chose the Living Building Challenge, and it's been great. You can see on this slide that this is something that comes at a premium. This isn't just this was not necessarily an easy decision. If you see at the bottom of the slide there, those numbers, if we just did sort of the baseline construction, what it would cost, per square foot, and then you see, how much it goes up going for the different certifications, all the way up to a 23% premium to pursue the Living Building Challenge. And our board said, yes, let's do it. Let's do this. So we started looking at buildings. We looked at, I think I personally toured 20 or 30 sites around the area. I think we did an analysis of maybe a dozen. 12 to 14, yeah. And we really came down to two potential sites. Am I going too far here in my presentation, Sally?
No, I think it's good that you're talking.
Okay, so we had, as Sally said, lots of people want to build a new building, and we had a green space downtown that we could have developed. But then we also had this building, which was the Musser Public Library in downtown Muscatine. H&I had recently moved to a new headquarters, designed by Neumann Monson, and left their old building to the city to become the new library and new community center. And so the former library, which in various iterations had sat on this site for over 100 years, was vacant, and it had sat there for about 3 years with no one really interested in buying it. There were some issues with the building that needed to be dealt with, some challenges. But looking at our values, we said, renovating that building would have a bigger impact on the community than building something new on that green space. And so we decided to purchase the library building and move forward from there. So so then we went through more work with Neumann Monson, going through the Living Building Challenge processes. One of them was this biophilia workshop. We had never done this before. I hadn't even heard the term before. But it was really about learning about what this place was. You can go on to the next slide. We lined up guest speakers to give us, context about the people, the culture, the place. We were very interested in indigenous populations that had formerly been in this space. We were interested in other parts of that history. You can go forward to the next slide. Part of this was, oh wow, there's so much on there. Remember, we were doing this during COVID, and we used lots of online tools in order to hold these workshops and capture this information.
8-hour workshop online.
Yeah, 8-hour workshop that we all had to do online, like all of us from various places on Zoom. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so we really wanted to learn about this history, and we had local historians. We've done a lot of work to try to build meaningful and authentic relationships with indigenous people in our area. We also were very cognizant of the fact that where our building is at the intersection of 3rd and Iowa played an integral role in the Alexander Clark and Susan Clark story. And if you don't know that story, I encourage you to learn more about it. But that's a picture of Alexander down in the lower left. He and his son were the first 2 black graduates of the University of Iowa College of Law, and his daughter, Susan Clark, wanted to go to the school, to the Muscatine Community School District school that was basically across the street from their home, near where our building is. And she was turned away 3 different times. He took the case all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court. And in 1868, they ruled that Iowa schools should be desegregated. The first state in the union to do that, and this happened, 80, 90 years before Brown versus Board of Education. So this is an important part of Iowa history. It's an important part of Muscatine history. In our little corner of Muscatine, it's a really huge part of that as well. And we have done things to try to honor that history in our area. Also wanted to honor the history of Muscatine as the pearl button capital of the world, and we have some features in our building that do that as well. One of the things that really stood out to me about this whole process, though, was also honoring the nature of that location and talking about, the history of what had happened there, but also the natural history. And so that really is about bringing that nature inside the building, making sure that people not only have the daylighting and the access to the outside world to see what's happening, but as you've seen from many of the pictures about our building, very important to bring that nature inside the building as well. All right, I'll turn it back over to Sally.
Yeah, Great, thank you. Okay, so from that biophilic workshop, that was really, the foundation of a lot of inspiration and thank you of a lot of inspiration for decisions that we're about to make and with their entire team. So as we get into some of the design strategies that we did incorporate, I'll talk through these. The list there that's on the screen. Many of these different strategies actually impact more than one petal, if you remember the categories, the petals, because so many of them are so interdependent on each other. You can't really address each petal in a siloed way. So that quickly became apparent to us. We didn't probably mention this before, but this was our first time ever doing a living building challenge as well. So they embraced taking on us learning the path of all this as well, which we really appreciated. So 2020, we started the project. We're going to go through a little series of these kind of aerial axons of the building. So the building itself there is outlined in the darker black. It's on the corner of an intersection there in downtown Muscatine. It's about 3 blocks or so from the Mississippi River. If you can see the light blue lines kind of running at a diagonal, that's an old storm sewer tunnel that's located directly under the floor of the building, like literally directly under the floor, not several feet down, but it's kind of a whole long story in itself. But it definitely presented some challenges to us along the way, and is remnants of an old creek bed that used to run through this site that they ended up burying at one point in time. But the building itself, it has what architects would call a really deep floor plate, meaning there's not a lot of, there's a lot of spaces in the center of the building that aren't very close to the exterior walls. It's got a lot of solid walls and really not much access to daylight. And we wanted to create a stronger connection really than to the outdoors. And for LBC, we knew we had to have 95% of occupiable spaces to have access to daylight. So 95% of the spaces needed access. So that was a challenge to overcome. And we also needed to find a home for urban agriculture. We're in an urban site here. We don't have really any land around it. Where are we going to start growing food? So if you can go to the next. The solution ended up to be to actually carve out a portion of the building and create a courtyard within the building itself. So that courtyard serves as a space for most of our agriculture, urban agriculture. It created a space for occupants to retreat to the outdoors. And really putting this courtyard in ended up being one of the most instrumental design strategies that impacted so many things and really helped us to meet many of the LBC requirements we needed to meet. And go next. An example here is the courtyard allowed light to penetrate deep into the space then, because now we've put this daylit hole in the building, right? And then to the side of it, there's actually this 2-story volume that already existed in the old library space, right? There's like this 2-story atrium space. So that was already there, and that was an internal space. So we said, well, what about if we put skylights in there? And now we have all this daylight that's flooding into the center of the building in all directions. And then those strategies helped us get to that 95%. So, and then the courtyard not only gave us additional real estate for daylight, but then also views, which are 2 different things. Getting daylight in, but also having a view and a connection to the outdoors. 2 different things, because you can get daylight from up high, but maybe still not have that connection to a view. So we were able to ring kind of the outer rims with offices, which all then could have views to the outside. And that's what all the arrows are representing, are the directions of the views there. And except for one little spot on the right hand side in the orange, there's a little box there of about 5 offices, and that happened to be directly on the property line on an alley, and we were not able to put windows directly into the alley because the wall was on the property line. So what do we do with them? Well, so for those, we really wanted to make all 28 offices that they had on their second level as equitable as possible. So we put in skylights above them for each of those 5 offices. They're on the top right of the screen on that floor plan there. And then in order to accomplish the view, we added green walls, or plant growing walls. So rather than literally a view to the outdoors, we try to bring the outdoors in and give them something to try to help make that a much more equitable
Those
space.
offices are very popular.
Yeah. It seems
People
like
love
that.
having those offices. It gives them a great zoom background as well, because now, since that picture was taken, they've really filled in, and it's beautiful in each of those offices.
Yep, I agree. That was a nice, happy accident that as the pandemic, obviously, we've all done much more Zoom meetings and have a background on us. And so having something beautiful and lush like that behind you has been a happy accident for sure. Okay, where was I? You can probably go to the next. This slide really just explains kind of how the overall, what we call a building program, how that breaks down. And it broke down into really two big categories, where all the private spaces were really on the second level, more of a retreat, if you will. And then the lower level, or the first level, I should say, were the public spaces. And those public spaces were more like things like the large gathering spaces. They call it the living room, their conference rooms, fitness room, and the kitchen and cafe as well. So just kind of a nice way to break things up. And then this slide is really demonstrating the connection then from the indoor living room and the cafe to the outdoor courtyard. And you can see right from the kind of cafe space right out into the courtyard, where you can go out and pick some fresh vegetables if you want them for lunch even. I don't know if it's showing up super well on the screen or not, but there's a little diagram. Maybe if you click one more time, it might be animated. There it is. Keeps coming there. So that's kind of where that old storm sewer tunnel was bisecting our building. And again, it's kind of a long story, but it literally like pushed the floor up in some parts of the building. And so it was this kind of unique thing we had to work around and figure out how can we actually exit out into the patio, and how can we keep everything ADA accessible without having steps and having to climb over different elevations of things. So it worked out well, but it was a unique challenge. You can see down in the lower right hand corner, there's a weird little angle kind of cutting right through the urban agriculture garden there, and that happens to be the top of that storm sewer tunnel cutting right through the building. And if you go next. And we were able to meet most of the urban agriculture requirements within that courtyard. There are guidelines that you have to follow for how large your building is, requires how much square footage of growing area you need and things. So most of it was outside. We did bring a little bit of it inside as well. So it's located in the living room, just around the corner from the cafe space. And in addition to that, Urban Ag really became this opportunity to provide an impact beyond just their project. They reached out to their next door neighbor, which was the Muscatine Center for Social Action, and they have a food pantry. They're literally right across the alley from each other, so they're next door neighbors. And they asked them for input on the crops and things that they would grow there. So now the Stanley Center shares their harvest with them on a very regular basis. It sounded like they definitely wanted a lot of they're a lot of times short of herbs and those kinds of things at the food pantry that they really wanted. And I might say that I think you found that you grow a lot of food in that little amount of area. Yes. Okay, so in terms of energy, well, now that when you're in an urban area, the roof isn't quite large enough to meet all of your solar demand needs, just to put the solar on the roof. And obviously we even put a hole in the roof with our courtyard, so we took away even more space. And we didn't have additional land for the ground-mounted array idea. So the solution was actually to create 2 additional solar canopies, we called them. And one is going along the whole front side of the building, which is actually on their property, but the other one actually covers the entire alley connecting over to that MCSA building. And that allowed us to reach 110% designed needs for energy for their facility. And the added bonus was the canopy over the alleyway created a little bit more of a sense of space in that alley, because that's also where all the patrons of the food pantry would queue up and line up every single day. So it gave them a little bit more protection there. And next, water. We had to collect all our water on site and, really be our own water supply. So all the water is collected from the roof as well as from those canopies. So that was another added bonus of those canopies, that was more surface area to collect water from. So the water is then stored. It's get collected off the roof. It goes through a main filter, and then it gets stored in those 2 large cisterns that are strategically located on the very front of the building. And then the potable water then goes through a treatment system located inside the building, adjacent to the cisterns. And then there's non-potable water that's used for toilets and for all the irrigation. And there's overflow then that is also collected in a bioretention on the south side of the site, and it flows below this outdoor entry plaza, which is along that symbolic kind of path shown by the pavers there. So there's literal water flowing underneath there. And then a little bit more on water regarding the wastewater. We weren't able to effectively treat all the wastewater on site. So once again, we reached out to those neighbors at MCSA. And LBC happens to provide an option called hand printing. And what that allowed us to do is essentially offset the amount of water or the amount of wastewater that the Stanley Center had projected to create by reducing MCSA's wastewater by that same amount. So we the whole project helped provide them new low-flow plumbing fixtures in terms of toilets, showers, and washing machines. And then that helped to achieve a net zero wastewater for the Stanley Center, but then also had the added benefit of providing much-needed new plumbing fixtures for MCSA and hopefully lowering their operating costs as well. So that was hopefully a really quick highlight of some of the major things. There's so many things we could go into, but I wanted to point those out as the highlights. Want me to keep going just
Sure.
a little bit? Yeah. A couple slides here. Okay. So lasting impacts. Do we have time, or do you need us to wrap up? Okay. Sorry. few things on lasting impacts. We recently attempted to map all the impacts this project has made throughout the world. It quickly kind of reached to that global scale. That's okay. You can keep going to the next one, because I know we're probably running short on time a little bit. Overall, with material waste, some of you may realize that sometimes it feels like it's getting harder and harder to recycle in a responsible way. And our contractors really tried to get creative and be persistent. And it took a lot of dedicated effort, but they managed to recycle over 95% of the construction waste, which was fantastic. And that equates to about 948 tons, and if you're a visual person, 948 tons equates to about 80 school buses, if you can see all those lined up, diverted from the landfill. So embodied carbon, if we haven't mentioned it already, we try to say that the most sustainable building project is the one you don't have to build, and the results of the life cycle analysis confirm the choice to renovate the building over versus building new, and by reusing almost 94% of the existing building by mass, we save 2/3 the amount of embodied carbon a typical new building of a similar size would have consumed. And this is probably a complicated little graph sometimes to understand, but it's just reinforcing basically what I said before, that after even further analysis and calculations that once you consider even the new materials that sequestered carbon within them, we were able to achieve a carbon net negative outcome. So hopefully that means the world's better off that the project happened than if it didn't happen. And when it comes to material sourcing, this is a big thing too. Vetting materials is an incredibly challenging aspect of the LBC. It requires us to vet at least 90% of the project's materials against what's called a red list, and which is basically a database of material ingredients known to be really harmful to the world and to humans. So it's very time consuming, takes a lot of effort to research them all. But when the manufacturer doesn't doesn't disclose all their processes or all their ingredients, if you will, of a material, then we're required to advocate back to them for a healthier material and a healthier process. So the result was researched over 2,200 different materials and sent almost 1,800 advocacy letters to various manufacturers as well. So they're really, LBC is really trying to help keep pushing the word out there more and more. There's also something called a declare label. If you haven't heard of that, that's essentially a transparent ingredient label of a building material. You could think of it like a nutrition label, like on your cereal box or any item of food that you have, but it's for a material instead of your food. And it's a newer concept out there, but we did manage to get over 100 products with declare labels. Geographic reach. We're able to exceed their thresholds, especially on the inner ring, so they want you to track all of this information as well. We nearly doubled the requirement for the amount of materials sourced within that inner 500-kilometer ring of the project site. So that means about half of the materials on the project came from within 500 miles of the project site, which helps obviously to keep shipping and things like that down, but also supports our local economies. We can keep going. And then speaking of those declare products, and kind of back to Keith had mentioned about H&I and Hahn and All Steel located right there in Muscatine. Well, they were fantastic partners. They jumped right in on this, and they essentially went through the whole process to create a declare label for one of their products, an all-steel demountable wall partition, which are these glass office fronts and doors on all of the offices. So they created a declare label inspired from the Stanley Center project, but now any project in the world can use that, right? So it's there and good and a healthy state for everyone. So that's a ripple effect. And I think here I'm going to turn it over to you, Keith.
I think you've probably already picked up on this idea that, employing green architecture as a shorthand is really about more than just the building itself. It really is about all of these other factors, including the social justice aspect of this. So one of the things that ILFI, the International Living Future Institute, runs is this just label process. This is really sort of a nutrition label for how your business is doing its work, how it's treating its people, how it's doing its recruiting. The label is broken down into a number of various components under the categories of diversity and inclusion, equity, employee health, employee benefits, stewardship, purchasing and supply chain, and underneath those there are various metrics as well. So you wouldn't normally think about this in a typical building process. In fact, anyone who's not doing a building can go to the site and do a self-assessment on how you rate against these metrics. But we found this to be really important because we've always wanted to be a leader in benefits as a way of attracting people and as a way of, preserving the dignity and respecting the humanity of our staff. But we didn't know exactly what good looked like. And what the Just Label people say is, in their manual, this is what good looks like. And so it's been really, really helpful to set standards on things like, what should minimum pay look like? What should gender pay equity look like? Like, what's the standard that we should be achieving? When we're promoting the physical health and well-being of our staff, what are the things that we need to do? What are the policies we need to have in place? What are the benefits that we need to have in place? When it comes to stewardship and giving back to the community, what are we doing when it comes to matching charitable donations and providing people with time off to do volunteering? So now we have this manual that really provides that standard. We did a label under Just 2.0. Now they've moved to Just 3.0. Any project like this requires at least two of the principal partners to have completed their certified Just label. So Neumann Monson did theirs. They've moved to Just 3.0. We've been working on moving to Just 3.0. It's a much higher, much more stringent standard. So it's really good, but it's taking a lot of work to make sure that we can get there. And we also asked anyone who was involved in our project to do a self-assessment. So just imagine, a firm that, a contracting or a subcontractor that, was providing some service to this project. We're asking them to do this self-assessment. They've probably never been asked to do that before, but it actually made them think about, What does their gender pay equity look like? How does their medical leave or their vacation leave stack up against industry standards? So it really forced them to, at least for a moment, stop and think about those things. And I know that many of those companies have said they really appreciated that opportunity to do those things. So I highly recommend people go look at the Just label because it's amazing just to have those standards all in one book. We can go forward on the slides. One of the things that's hugely important, not just to us, but to the project and to the Living Building Challenge, is our connection to the community. And how do we continue telling this story? So we have all kinds of events and tours. It's amazing working in a building that is basically a tourist attraction. So I'll be sitting there in my office and a group of kindergartners will walk by my glass-fronted office. And that's just incredible. In fact, over the next 2 weeks, every kindergartner in Muscatine will tour our building. And we've done that every year for the last couple of years.
Literally an excursion.
The American Cruise Lines 2 years ago started this cruise down the Mississippi River, up and down the Mississippi River. They chose Muscatine as one of the stops for the cruise, and they chose our building as a premium tour. So people are actually paying extra. We're donating that money, but they're paying extra to come tour our building. So that's fantastic. In that middle picture there, you can see that we installed a window into the service part of the building so that they can actually see how the water treatment works there. Hand printing. Sally mentioned how we got new washers and dryers, plus the shower and toilets for MCSA. And then on the next slide, yes, the food, the urban agriculture is important, but it's important for the community aspect as well because we're donating that excess food. The middle slide shows these, what are they called? Splash guards? Backsplash, that's what it is. In our kitchen area, those are made from pearl button shells. So it's the blank that's punched out of the shell before it's actually turned into a button. Our local history museum has barrels of these around, so we asked if we could use some. We made a donation to them, and then we stood there actually at the table and slid them all into this glass shadow box, and so it was completely non-destructive. Someone could open that up and pour them back out and return them to the museum if we needed to. The third thing I'll point out there is the tree of accountability. So we really wanted to go beyond just land acknowledgement, and we wanted to acknowledge the accountability that we have as settler folks to the indigenous population. So these trees that are in our atrium were made from the aluminum that was recycled from former guardrails that were in the building. Muscatine Community College students actually made the trees. Then the leaves came from decommissioned library books at our art center, and I see our art center director, Melanie Alexander, back there. They organized folks to come in and actually cut out the leaves, paint them green, and then we gave them to lots of different folks. We collected comments from indigenous people and from settlers, and if you look at the trees and you see the comments, you'll see it's really a conversation about what that accountability looks like and what expectations are on both sides. So it's been a great way to actually build that relationship. And one of the things I tell people about this building, sort of one of the unspoken or more informal ways that I wanted to judge the success of this building was when we brought people in to interview for jobs. I want them to walk in and go, "Wow, I'd really like to work here." And I think that's happened 3 times now since we actually started the building. So it's met our metric of success on many different levels.
That's great. Oh, yeah. You want to take the next ones, or you want me to close it out? I think they probably want to move out either way. Okay.
Yeah, I do want to encourage people to look at our website because if you go to the next slide, you can see that we have just tons of materials on there, videos about the project. There is a 3D interactive tour. You can actually walk through the building, as a 3D tour like you can if you were buying a new house. So the videos are there. We have these books. Healing Ground, Living Values, a book about the project, includes a lot of history about the organization, but also much of what we've shared here. We had a CBS television program, America by Design, that did a program about our building, a segment about our building at least, and then a lot of advocacy out in the world. If you go to the next slide, you can just see that we've been at the International Living Future annual conference. We've done presentations, the American Institute of Architects conferences, and then all of these other things that we've done to try to continue to tell the story of our building. So really, this is, ultimately, we like to say that this is, it's really about the people occupying the building, and, those people are really thrilled with their new space. People say they're eating healthier, they're, taking advantage of the food that's grown on site. We have the fitness center on site. We have internal messaging channels where people can talk about, the building itself and what's working, what's not working, what needs to be done, but also sharing information about butterflies that have shown up and the bees and the rabbits that we see running around outside our building. So it's really, it's been quite a journey for us, being, formerly hidden up in the upper floors of office buildings and things like that, and now being in a prominent location in downtown with a big sign on front that says the Stanley Center for Peace and Security. So that's been a big change for us as well. We do have public tours on the second Tuesday of every month, but of course, if you contact us, we are more than happy to accommodate whatever your needs are for coming into the building and seeing what we've done.
Yes. That was great. They probably want to move us along. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Wow. I had no idea that building was like that. Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Again, I want to welcome everybody here to our facility. Now we get our turn to show off our building. So again, my name's Deb Schoelerman, and I've been a member here for a long time and served on various teams. So as a mission-driven religious organization, I'm skipping some of this stuff. Unitarian Universalists have shared values and principles. Our seventh principle is respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. This principle compels us to take responsibility for the Earth's well-being. Inspired by this principle, we chose to build the greenest building possible within our means. Our congregation is accredited as a Green Sanctuary congregation through the Unitarian Universalist Association. Our Green Sanctuary team was formed in 2008, and since then has focused on educating and leading our congregation in four main areas: environmental justice, worship and celebration, religious education, and sustainable living. The values of sustainability and caring for the earth were long in place before we began to plan for this new facility. Our congregation had the foundation to embrace the slogan during this capital campaign: "We are building the greenest church in Iowa." Before deciding to build new, we did thoroughly evaluate and explore the option of refurbishing and remodeling the building we were inhabiting downtown, and it was just not going to happen. It was cost prohibitive. We also searched for a suitable building to repurpose, but we found none. But then in 2016, we found this piece of land, 5.5 acres, and we purchased it. And we pretty confident we saved it from condos being built here. We knew that building a sustainable and green building would cost more, but our congregation rose to the challenge, and we had a very successful capital campaign, plus a mortgage, plus we sold our downtown building. In Earth Day 2016 was groundbreaking ceremony, and everybody helped. Everybody brought their own tool, their own digging tool. Actual construction took 18 months, and it was just fascinating to watch. We moved into the new facility in October of 2017, and it was a wonderful day for celebration. This is our 8th year here, and that's hard to imagine. Our new facilities committee worked with lead certified architects Matt Krieger and Dave Zrodnik from Neumann Monson to plan the facility. The construction company was McComas Lacima, MCL. And Sally mentioned that Neumann Monson was great to work with. We did some visioning workshops. We had a great turnout from our congregation, so they helped us figure out or verbalize what kind of building do you want. And we wanted windows too. We wanted we learned later it's biophilia, to be able to feel connected to the outdoors. So yeah, Neumann Monson they have this great process of helping you figure out what you want. So here we are, a building that's functional, accessible, and beautiful. The building itself is 18,450 square feet. That includes many sustainable and energy-saving buildings features. You can see here back up 1 second. This was a drone view that Neumann Monson did for us and shared. So you can see there's about 150 solar panels on the roof, which is over that lower part over there, and then the rest of them are on the west side of the building outside. This was before we did a lot of our landscaping. So we are a net zero building with on-site renewable energy production, no fossil fuels. 429 panels, I mentioned that. In 2023, we consumed 81,720 kilowatt hours of electricity, and generated 83,400 kilowatts. And I remember shortly after we moved in, we were getting all our accounts set up, and the church treasurer came to me and he said, I can't find the gas bill. Where's the gas bill? I said, we don't have one. We're not going to have one. There is no gas. The building has geothermal heating and cooling system with 10 heat pumps throughout the building. And there are radiant heat pipes under the sanctuary here and the fellowship hall over there. We've installed Energy Star appliances in the kitchen. There's LED lighting everywhere with motion-activated switches. We also have low water use plumbing devices with some motion-activated faucets. And when 2 of them stopped working, and we found out it was $750 to replace them, we went with replace them with the ones you do just with your hands. So that was a surprise. Oh, they're kind of expensive. But most of them are still motion activated. We have 4 car charging stations for electrical vehicles, and we are planning to add more. To preserve our woodlands, we limited the parking lot to 75 spaces. We encourage our members to carpool, walk if they are close enough, ride a bike, or use nearby parking lots. Kirkwood's over there, and the university's got a lot up there. We have this 5.5 acres plus 3.5 acres that way, 3 acres that way that was donated to us, and there's a story there. But our members and friends are able to enjoy our green space, the next one, by walking on the trails that we have on these several acres here through our woods. We celebrate Beltane with our maypole every May. We also have a labyrinth on the west side of the building it's open for the wider community, and we located it next to the street for easy access for the community. We have 3 bioretention cells. The first time we planted these, this would have been in 2017, with a wide variety of forbs and grasses. And we have lots of members and friends who love to plant here, so we can always get lots of people to help plant. However, we had some challenges with this big one, and to be totally honest, we didn't know what we were doing to maintain it. We didn't have the volunteer staff or the staff capacity to fully take care of it. We'd planted over 1,000 plant plugs, and the weeds took over, and then later we had some erosion issues, and we had to redo the entire bioretention cell. But now it looks a lot better. We've replaced it with shrubs, pollinator shrubs, 9-bark elderberry, viburnum, iceberg willow, and serviceberry. So we're pretty confident we've taken care of the issues that we had with that. Oh yes, then I happened to be here one day when it was raining. I had my phone, and this is what it does. So that's what it's supposed to do, and it does it. And it filters the water that comes off the roof and off the parking lot and filters it before it goes down to the tributary to Muddy Creek down the hill. We also replanted retention cell number 3 out here because, again, we learned how to take care of it, and now we have prairie drop seed and little blue stem. In 2019, we started planting conifers and shrubs and grasses on the west side of the building, and we're making our way around the building. And each year we've added a few more trees and shrubs. This is one right out here. And finally, we finished the east side of the Fellowship Hall a couple years ago. Okay, like I said, we have people who like to dig holes and play in the soil, right? Probably the most exciting thing for me right now is our camps for children. We have summer camps, we have spring camps, we have peace camp. And the purpose of the mission of the camps is to honor the earth, build deeper connections, and promote social justice. Since moving in 2017, we've always had the goal of creating a natural playscape. Every year we've been adding to it, and now we're at the point of having a very usable and fun space for all to enjoy, especially for children, families, and our camps. So last summer we were able to create a space for the picnic tables under that oak tree, and we were able to add more boulders to the boulder scramble, and finally able to install that slide you see right there, which we've had for 5 years, and we finally got it in. Our director of Lifestyle and Religious Education has taken full advantage of these 8.5 acres. During summer and spring break camps, you can see children and counselors in all parts of the space. There's a pine tree out here that kids love to climb in. You might find them down by the creek. They might be getting up close and personal with an insect that they found. This is one of my favorite pictures. They might be conversing over what they see on the ground. They might be playing on the balance beam. They might be reacting to a baby snake. This is one of Nick's favorites, if you look at those expressions. An exciting addition for me was a container pond that we installed, and it's right out this window. And it's very popular with the children and, of course, some of the adults. So what do you think these kids are looking for? What do you think they're waiting for? Good guess. Tadpoles is a good guess. Anything else? Maybe this year. Frogs. Leopard frogs. So this was in July. I was here. I happened to be here, and I saw 2 leopard frogs, and I came running in to tell Nick, there's frogs out there. And so we have at least 5. But I don't know anybody who's counting. So we'll see. Maybe this year we'll have tadpoles because it's in already. Okay, we mostly enjoy the space with the other critters on this land. We have deer, turkeys, squirrels, lots of birds. We have an occasion seen the woodchuck and a coyote. And we now have a bat house. One of our biggest surprises and challenges is that the woodpeckers love hanging out on the cedar cladding and pecking holes in it. So our current focus and next goals are continue to enhance the outdoor spaces. So this summer we're planning to increase the number of native grasses and forbs to attract more pollinators and to support more biodiversity and sustainability. We're also discussing how to tackle the invasives in our woods, mostly bittersweet and honeysuckle in particular. And maybe we'll have goats on the go come. But we love being here. And there's always something new to learn and do, especially outdoors. Again, thanks for coming here and being part of this. We were happy to be part of this program. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, it's okay. This one's on. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sally and Keith and Deb, for your wonderful wonderful presentations this morning. We learned a lot. I know I did. These are many topics that I'm not personally very familiar with. But one thing, I'll just make a quick comment, and then we can actually open it to all of you for your questions and comments. One thing that I was thinking about during your three presentations and our conversation was this idea of, I'm going to step down so I don't fall. I was thinking, thank you. I was thinking about sort of the difference between the way that, particularly here in, say, North America, we think about this idea of space, and then thinking about it instead of space, but thinking about it rather as place. And I think that is something that came through very, very strongly in all three of your presentations this morning, in the sense that we're not just sitting in a space, we are living in a place. And if we could sort of shift our perspective in terms of what's around us and think about it more broadly as placemaking is a term that comes up a lot, but in terms of a place to be, in terms of a place to thrive. And to thrive, we don't thrive alone. We thrive in conjunction. We thrive together with others. So I think the message I guess that I would take home probably from this today is the idea that we're not alone. We are all together. Everything is connected. And instead of thinking about, the little house that I'm going to go home to in downtown Iowa City after this, thinking of it rather instead of just a space with four walls, but thinking of it rather as a place and as a community place, I suppose. So I guess maybe on that note, we can open it up to all of you to see if you have any questions or just comments, if not even questions. Yes, please. And if you could just do us a favor of introducing yourself and then your comment. Thank you.
My name is Lydia Skrenikova, and I teach environmental science at Iowa State University. And I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing at Stanley Center.
Yeah, I mean, just real briefly, I could talk forever about this, but, like I said, we work on climate change, nuclear weapons policy, and mass violence and atrocities. Those are our three big global challenges that we want to tackle. Those are very broad areas. We can't do everything. We're very specific about the policy change goals that we have in each of those areas and the work that we want to accomplish. In addition to that, we have a program that works with journalists and media to increase their knowledge and exposure to the issues in climate, mass violence and atrocities, and nuclear weapons policy. And then we have a global education program that we run in Muscatine, where we do all kinds of things, including sending teachers on overseas study trips, sending students to model UN conferences around the world, doing exchange programs, providing resource material for teachers in the classrooms, and doing community programming as well. So that's the broad spectrum. When you look at the work that we do in global challenges, if we're talking about nuclear risk reduction, which is something that we are working on right now, that would involve a number of conferences that we organize, both in the United States and overseas. It would involve commissioning research, and it would involve creating networks. It would also involve creating networks of organizations that are interested in that topic that may not have seen themselves as being in affinity with each other before. And then also we have something in that area, in that space, called the Accelerator Initiative, which is for young women professionals in the area to make sure that they get just some extra advantages in advancing in that field as well by commissioning them from research, making sure they have access to our conferences and to mentors in the field. So it's just one example of the kind of work that we do, and we do that in each of our global challenge areas. I don't know, does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Thank you. Yes, Thais.
Hello, I'm Thais Winkelblack. Thanks for your presentations today. And I'm glad that we'll be able to share it with others, because I'm thinking of a lot of people that I know that would really have appreciated hearing what you shared with us today. I really liked the slide where you talked about the increased square footage cost. I think it said 23% greater cost for the project that you went through, the living building certification. It's super cool. I'm wondering, from an architecture point of view, or being in the field, obviously the Stanley Center has taken a major leadership role in helping promote these types of practices, as has the UU. How do you see that? You talked about some of the, I can't remember the sort of the labeling that helps get improved. Do you see this as also, have you seen an evolution in having this be more accessible to people who don't have the plus 23% budget to try to obtain these types of green building practices?
Yeah, great question. I would say those increments and cost increases too are very specific to that particular building. So that can very much change and has to kind of be studied for your particular space. But it gives a general idea of, you get the feel of what the incremental differences are, right? The Stanley Center is absolutely something to aspire to, right? Use as they're certainly a catalyst for broader change. And we see a lot of people that are interested in it or certain aspects of it, or we've had a number of organizations reach out recently more on talking about the LBC and how can this be kind of adopted as some guiding principles for them, for master plans or for just how they are operating within their organizations, and knowing that you have to kind of incorporate this as a sense of scale for every organization, right? One of the things I like to say when we start working with anyone is, and that was part of our very first workshop with them and how we got to LBC with them, is, well, what does sustainability mean to you? What does it mean to your organization? Because it doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, and not everyone has the same resources and the same needs either. And so we work through that to figure out how can we attain what it means to them, as well as set them up for future aspirations if they can't handle that right now. I don't know if that helps answer.
Yeah, I would say this was a way for us to use our privilege, because we could do it. We weren't going to be moving again, so, let's go all in on this. Also knowing that we would be pioneers, that, we would be sort of blazing a trail that hopefully it would be easier for others to follow after that. And we've seen some of this happen. I can't remember the name of the company that did our roofing material, but this was a big deal. They had to start up another production line to do it, but now they're making that material. It's going to be cheaper for the next people to buy that material. They actually sent a camera crew to record it being installed because it was so new, but it won't always be like that, and the price will come down. And then another ripple effect that I love to talk about was our contractor, Graham Construction, was just so good in working with us and helping us meet these standards. So 95% of the material had to be diverted from the landfill. Most of that was concrete that was taken out of the old building. And they had always just taken that to the landfill. That was just their regular, normal mode of operation. So they had to find a place that would take it. And now they say, well, we're going to do that with all of our projects now, right? So that's a ripple effect that hopefully by doing a little bit of that premium, we're actually having an impact on other projects as well.
And just to add on a little bit about the Declare label, I think you were mentioning the labels and things. We are seeing more and more Declare labels come to be. We regularly have what we call lunch and learns, where it's product reps coming into our office, educating us on their materials all the time. And more, they used to react a lot to LEED and what the requirements of LEED and how they could help us achieve those requirements. And now they're even taking that next step further, and we're seeing more often that they're either have their Declare label or at least are aware of it, and much more transparent about what is making up those materials, and the processes that it has on the people that are making those materials too. Because there's a lot of situations in manufacturing where it's not necessarily a healthy environment either. So there's more awareness coming of that.
Good, thank you. Yes, Sunday, please.
My name is Sunday, and I'm on the board of ICFRC too. As a follow-up to that question, so we're talking at corporate levels organizational, institutional levels. How does this play, especially in your field as an architect, in terms of how can this be pushed into private buildings, residential buildings? What's the effort in trying to make developers adopt this amazing work that you've done? Because I see this working at corporate level because of the finances involved, but how does that play at individual levels?
Kind of more in the private or individual role, you're thinking, or
Yes,
developer
residential.
role, and residential. Sure, there's various things on the residential side that you can adopt, or philosophies, of these things. It kind of needs, I guess as individuals, we can do as much as we can and research as much of the materials we're putting into our own homes, or do the recycling and composting and LED lights, or put solar panels on our roofs and things like that. And to make even a bigger impact if we can get it into larger neighborhoods and, as more of an adaptive thing versus a individual by individual basis. Developers, that can be hard sometimes, those that are looking more for the first cost, or having to prove it out, and how do they figure out how to pass that cost on to those that are going to occupy the space. I think that remains to be a challenging area for sure. We definitely have worked on some private developer projects that have gone with LEED certification, or trying to adopt those principles at least. I think some of the positives about LEED is we haven't seen as many certifications recently, but it's becoming a little bit more, the practices are becoming a little bit more normalized as well, right? And that's a good thing. I mean, that's a positive. So if we can kind of keep working towards those things, the better off we'll all be. I don't know if anybody else has more to add to that.
I'm going to take advantage of my position as moderator right now, and I have a question for you, Deb. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be in Mexico over spring break. That was last week at the University of Iowa. And the area that I was in is in the Yucatan Peninsula, and we were working with students at a university there who are Mayan descent. Most of them are actually bilingual. And part of the campus at the university was a walk through basically plants, native plants to the region, medicinal plants, cooking, and they had various houses that were available as well, that people still live in these types of houses, but they had them on the campus. One thing that was thread through this whole tour that they gave us and this conversation that we had was exactly as what was thread through your talk as well, which is spirituality, and a very deep spirituality in terms of the connection between beliefs and between action and between, again, or amongst, maybe I should say, space. So I was wondering if you could perhaps comment a little bit on that for us, say specifically to the context here of the Universalist Church that you're a member of. Mm-hmm. It's huge. I apologize for making it so it's such a big question, but
I think first word that comes to mind is we are grateful to have this space, and we appreciate it. We do our best to take care of it. We do have acknowledged the people who came before us and took care of it. So does that answer that enough or not? Because I can talk about something else.
Sure, talk about whatever you prefer, okay, Deb. That's fine. Thank you.
No, I think we do have reverence for the land as part of who we are in the spaces that we occupy. So for several years, this is pre-COVID, and we're hoping to get it going. We have had 4 intergenerational trips to Guatemala, in their case, Saltenango, in the northwestern highlands. And we go there to work with the Chico Mendes Reforestation Project. And their mission is plant trees now for the future. So when we've gone there, I bet probably close to 100 people from our congregation have gone. We learn about the culture. We learn about the reverence for the land there, every tree that's planted. Well, before we go on a tree planting, let's take a few moments and think about what we're going to do and get centered, and now we're going to go plant these trees. We've communicated, when we're there, we also learn about some of the native plants that are used. And one of the young women fell and twisted her ankle, and so what did Claudia do? She got out her herbs and she took care of her ankle, and she took care of it. Another tip we were talking about was with a woman. We have to get back. There's too many plastic bags. We have to get back to what our ancestors did. We don't need plastic bags. We use banana leaves to go to the market to get our food. So I think there is, it's been wonderful to be exposed to some of those traditional, thoughts and beliefs and teachings that people around the world have to offer us. Does that answer that a little bit?
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we are almost. How are we for time, Peter? A little bit more? One more question? All right. Would anybody else like to ask a question? Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm going to answer that question just a little more directly, and that is that in my experience and many of my friends' experience is that they see God in nature. And so to protect that is allowing people that same connection.
That might be a good place to end. Thank you very much. And thank you very, very much to our panelists this morning. It was very, very informative, and informative in a lot of different ways. Informative in terms of facts, but also informative in terms of, I think, giving us a lot to think about on various different levels. So thank you all very much for attending, and thank you. And I think if I remember correctly, yes, we're heading to the back over here. We have some coffee and light refreshments. Yeah, Deb says, please go eat some food. So there we are. There's our formal invitation.